An admittedly poorly timed walk turns into a series of terrifying hide-and-seek matches. I'll begin this story by saying that my judgment at the time was not the greatest. I had some friends visiting from a city about an 8-hour train ride from mine, and we've been up nearly all night goofing off. No alcohol or drugs, but we were all pretty tired, to be honest. The two who were visiting went to sleep, but another friend, one from in town, decided to take a walk. I trust this guy Alex, and he's pretty strong for some reason despite not looking it, so we decided to head out on a walk at 5 in the morning, and we're going to call some friends who lived nearby, but figured none were awake or wanted to be woken, so we ended up taking a loop around several long roads through some neighborhoods until we got back to my house. At one point, we end up in our friend Chris's neighborhood, and as we're walking, a car goes by. This isn't really unusual. We'd seen a couple, and I kinda just casually waved to make it look like I was friendly, since I didn't want to look suspicious. It was, after all, still 5 in the morning. And then this car stops, about maybe 100 feet ahead of us, next to a mailbox. I couldn't see very well, but I know I saw a hand stick out for a second or two, then pull back in, and the car speeds off. Me and Al go to investigate, and there's nothing out of place, which he concludes means they probably just stole some mail or something like that. I'm thinking to myself, well, that's pretty stupid, and we share a quick laugh. Then I see some more headlights, and the same car comes back around and speeds off past us in the opposite direction. At this point, I'm playing it cool, and Al is already hiding behind trees and trying to get me to follow. I'm still convinced it's nothing until they come around a third time. At this point, I'm yanked into some tall grass by the side of the road, and we're calling Chris. As Al's fumbling with his phone, the car slows, turns its high beams on, and pulls into a driveway so it can turn around and come back again. I'm mumbling that we're going to die as we call Chris. She picks up, thankfully, and we briefly explain the situation before running across the street to her house. While the coast is clear, the car is presumably gone. We don't see it for the rest of our walk. The story, however, isn't over. After spending a few minutes sitting with Chris, we head back to my house. As we enter my neighborhood, literally 5 or 6 houses from mine, we see another car drive by. I give a small wave. After all, I live here, and we continue. Alex looks back and suddenly starts walking faster, telling me they're slowing down, go. They're slowing down, go. I follow, though I'm out of breath from the walking, cramping, and he tells me they're pulling into a driveway. Then they stop. And he says something like, I think they just turn around. They were considering it. I'm completely done at this point, and my house is in the sight, but as soon as we get back on the road, wait, no, they're turning around. I cannot run right now, so I say that we're close enough to my house for it not to matter. The car had stopped in the driveway, almost turned around, pulled back out, and kept driving, then possibly turned around and head back, though we never saw it again. There's an audible sigh from both of us. We get inside my house, and I think that was the day I learned not to ever walk outside and then again, which admittedly wasn't a great idea to begin with, so male thief and neighborhood creep, as much as I love to ask you your thoughts on what you were doing, let's not meet, okay? The last time I ever played hide and seek, it was when I was a child, living in the southwestern US. It was dark outside. I'd have to guess around or past 9, and for whatever reason I was playing hide and seek with a few of the kids that lived in the same set of apartments as me. It wasn't a multi-story complex as you might imagine, but a number of single-level buildings, each containing 2 apartments, and all of them roughly forming the shapes of 2 square brackets facing each other and divided by a road. If you will, it was fairly open, but it was. Because of that, I chose to hide in one of the most obscure areas. I decided to hide in the top right region of the right bracket, along with the side of the building there. I was actually laying on my side, back flat against the wall, trying to fit within the shadow cast by the edge of that particular building, feet pointed towards the building's backside. I don't recall how long I was hiding there before he appeared without any warning. He slowly walked up from behind the building, turning to face my direction, and stood there with his arms slightly out from his sides, breathing heavily. He had somewhat wild hair that stopped just above his shoulders, but I couldn't make out anything about his face. In fact, I remember the general scene pretty clearly, but his face is just a black spot for me. I stayed the stillest I've ever probably managed to be in my life, hoping he didn't notice me, even though I'm absolutely sure he did. After 5 to 10 seconds, he went back the way he came, disappearing behind the building. I think I waited a few seconds before getting up and hauling ass out of there to my own place. Hide and seek game be damned. In spite of how bothersome that event could or should have been in my mind, it didn't really stick with me, and I don't think about it. I actually didn't really think about it for a long time. Until I found this subreddit, actually. It didn't even occur to me to think what he would have possibly done to me until I told a friend the story last night. And he said something like, dude, you're lucky to be here now. I don't know who he was, what he was doing, or what he was considering doing, but I suppose I do consider myself pretty lucky now. Hide and seek with a creepy cat sitter. Okay, so this happened to me earlier this evening, and I'm still pretty shaken up by it. It's as of yet unresolved. I'll update when I know the full story. I've never posted here before, but I feel you guys might appreciate this story and maybe have some advice or explanation for it. I'll give you some background information. I'm staying at my mom's for a few days, and we regularly have to feed one of our neighbor's cats, who lives a couple houses down from us. She requires a lot of attention. She needs medication for a skin disorder she gets from stress, and a lot of love to help ease the stress while her owner is away. I normally give her more attention than my mom while I'm around, so if I'm in town, I normally feed her. So this morning, just after I've gone up at maybe 10 o'clock, there's a loud knock on my front door. Assuming it's the postman or something like that, I answer it, and a short, kind of raggedy, wild-looking, dark-haired man is there. Millie? He asks, falling just short of making eye contact with me. 2 doors down, I say with a smile, not really questioning it, as I'm kind of in skimpy pajamas and would just like him to go away. I close the door quickly as he bounces down the road, assuming he's a workman or builder or something, to explain the rough-looking appearance. I don't give it another thoughts. I go on with my day until the evening. When it's time to feed Millie's cat, I enter the house with a spare key, as usual, call for the cat, and nothing. Call her again? Nothing. I just think she might be out, so I change her food and water. Before I leave, I give the house a quick scout around just in case she's asleep, so I can give her a fuss and a comfort. After calling again, I find her in the spare room, which is unusual because I've never seen her here before. Normally she is always either out or on Millie's bed. She seems much more agitated than usual, and will barely let me touch her, pacing around me and fixing her eyes on point, and looking like she's listening for something. I only have the light at the stairs on the point, and the two of us are just sitting on the floor at the top, facing towards Millie's bedroom, which is in darkness. I try to soothe the cat, figuring it's just stress from having to be alone all the time. When I catch sight of movement in the far side of her room, I freeze. The cat paces around me, and straining my eyes, I peer into the half-lit room, keeping low to the ground. Movement again. I heard it this time too. God, I'm struggling to write this next bit. My heart jumped at the sight. In her big window opposite me, behind the bed, I can see the reflection of someone facing the window. I don't know if they see me, but I assume so. I quickly say goodbye to the cat, as if nothing had happened, and I haven't seen shit, and I nope the fuck out of there, and lock my own front door a lot when I get in. I'm thinking it might be the guy I saw at the door earlier in the day. I couldn't see well enough to say. It just might be a shy friend or relative who was having a nap and decided to hide, but hell, it freaked me the fuck out. I also have this policeman neighbor, and I waited till he got home and told him. He went over and said there was no one there and nothing looked unusual, so who knows. I've sent a casual text to Millie, asking if there's anyone staying in her house, which hopefully won't raise any alarms by the way I phrased it. I'll let you know if the mystery gets solved, but holy shitballs, I'm terrified. The only thing is that she has a sketchy ex-boyfriend who turned out to be like some serial polygamist who has been giving her grief again for about a year now, and this crossed my mind. But I honestly had no idea. Maybe I hallucinated. Weird farmer tried to take us home. So, to give you guys a little background, this happened when I was 16 years old, and I'm now almost 24 years old. I recall this incident recently when I found out the farm in question has been partially sold off for the land to be used as housing in new warehouse business parks. I'm from a small town in England that is surrounded by a lot of farmland, so my youth self and a few friends spent a lot of time adventuring through the fields and quarries at the back of our houses, much to our parents' dismay. This incident involved myself and my best friend Sophie, who is the exact same age as me, and we share a birthday. To set the scene, so you get an idea of just how far we had stumbled, I will explain a little. A few houses down from mine is a small park, which then has a caravan park trailer park behind it, where many elderly live, and to the side of them is a narrow, thin pathway, which we have always called the Jitty. It leads up to a field full of trees, brambles, and other foliage, where we spent many days playing games, such as hide and seek, or building dens and so on. Beyond this is a few more fields, I would say, around three or four huge fields, which then come to a set of train lines, which are still actively used for coal trains and other trains used by quarries and brickwork businesses that are around my town. We would often mess around on the train lines and come up with weird things we knew about them, such as a young girl who had died there. Near these train lines was a huge lot of fields, which led up to a farmhouse that had lambs and a pen, and a few other animals such as chickens. This particular day was really sunny, and myself and Sophie had decided to walk as far as we could, which would be approximately 3 miles from my house to this particular farm. We knew that we weren't really supposed to be there, but there was a public nature walk footpath that led down the side of it, and we could say we just got off track if we got caught, so we weren't really worried at all. The lambs were making a lot of noises, so me and Sophie decided to get a little closer and see if we couldn't pet one or two of them. As we were getting closer to them, we noticed a few things we hadn't before. 1. The lambs were marked in red paint. 2. They weren't the ones making all the noise. 3. The farm had a few warehouses on it. So myself and Sophie decided that we would venture around, assuming no one was there, and see if we could find where the noise was coming from, wondering if maybe there were more animals we could take a look at, like our own free petting zoo or something like that. This is where we happened upon 3 big things. 1. The farmer had his own private small 2-set plane that was sticking out from one of the warehouses. 2. One of the warehouses was where the house was coming from, and 3. We were not alone. Farmer appeared out of what we assumed were more animals were kept, but we heard the animals inside making a horrendous noise. Have you ever heard a lamb being killed? You know that it sounded like a child screaming. The farmer had overalls and an apron on that we realized had blood on it, which is when it dawned upon us that this was indeed a slaughterhouse. The farmer looked startled to see us, and for a moment he looked angry, but then his face indeed seemed to show no emotion, and came across blank as he looked both Sophie and myself up and down, observing us unnervingly before he spoke. "What are you doing on my farm?" he asked, his face completely unchanging. Of course, both of us were extremely cautious, so I told him we were just going for a walk, and seemed to have gone off the path a little. If he just pointed us back towards the road, we could get ourselves back to the path. He shook his head at me slowly, and pointed at us both, telling us we looked a little young to be wandering so far from home, and did our parents know where we were? Sophie laughed and told him yes, they knew, and we were 16, so we were fine, thanks. He then proceeded to ask us where we lived anyways, and Sophie told him our town, which was down the road, to which I glared at her, knowing my stranger danger. You never tell them your age, or where you live, goddammit. I knew Sophie was giving away everything with a single thought for safety. Just because there were 2 of us, she assumed that we were safe. I knew otherwise, and from the vibe I got from the guy, I didn't feel safe, nor did I assume we were. His eyes seemed to probe over us repeatedly, and he moved slowly towards us as we spoke, taking subtle but deliberate movements to enhance towards us. I slowly backed away, pulling Sophie with me, and concerned for how close he was getting, and wondering why nothing felt off to Sophie. The farmer took off his apron and surveyed us for a moment before saying in a lower tone, "Well, I'm going that way just now to go to the shop. I could give you girls a lift back home. It wouldn't be a problem. Just come, get in the car." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I don't recall just what it was about, but the way he asked, but something in the way he spoke or the way he looked when he said it just didn't sit right with me. It made me feel extremely unsafe, but for some reason, it was all lost. And Sophie just blurted out and said, "Sure, thanks." I remember looking at her horrified, and we retreated to get his car. I then tried to reason with her that we need to get out of there now. It wasn't safe, and I just didn't feel right. And I wanted to run back the way we had come through hedges. He couldn't chase us through. I remember how she laughed at me and told me I was being worried, but then her face fell when we saw him reversing to where Wed stood and get out of the car. It was a black 4-car door of some sort. I remember what make or model. It was so long ago, but I do remember the interior gray seats as he opened the back door. "Well, girls, come on in. I'm sure it'll only take us 5 minutes to get you home. Why don't you come in? Don't you want a ride?" I shook my head and said that my cousin had texted and he was meeting us back down the trail we come from. And then this farmer's face dropped and the friendliness seemed to disappear as he slammed the door. "Fine," he snapped, got in his car, and began to drive off. Sophie was really angry at me and asked what I'd done, that he was only trying to help. I tried to explain what I felt, as I always trusted my gut and had never been wrong. I seem to get feelings about people when I meet them, like vibes on whether or not they're a good person. And something about this man just didn't feel right to me, and the alarm bells told me to run. All of a sudden, I looked at Sophie's face to find her pale as a sheet and looking like she was going to be sick. "We need to go now," and she told me. I asked what was going on, and she pointed. There were 3 stone roadways, one into the fields, one through the fields to the roadway, and one that looped back to the farm. The driver had driven to the one that looped back to the farm and was on his way back. He deliberately pretended to leave. Sophie grabbed hold of my arm and we both started running back the way we'd come, through brambles and thorns. We hid for around half an hour and then walked home. We were both terrified, and we decided Sophie would stay at mine for that night, as neither of us really, truly wanted to be alone. We never did go back walking through those fields. So, to the creepy farmer with clearly less than honorable intentions, let's not meet again.